Thank you for coming. This actually is the third in our speaker series. We are so fortunate to have our invited guest, who I will introduce in just a couple of minutes, to conclude our spring speaker series. I also want to thank those who came out to the first two speakers, and those who may have made the hat trick. I won't embarrass some of you who were here for all three. That's remarkable. This is an initiative we tried a few years ago, and we really didn't see a lot of success with it. But it is very much a goal of the district leadership team to offer opportunities for all of us to be a part of one learning community. So this is wonderful, the turnout for our guests this evening. I want to just do a quick introduction, and for the 5th grade parents and guardians who are here, I'm not really deviating at all, especially if you've had, say, your 5th grade son or daughter has older brothers or sisters that have passed through the middle school and you've been a part of this 5th grade night. This 5th grade night is a hybrid of information about the middle school, but then I find some time to really share my philosophy of a middle school. And in that philosophy, I really share a difference between a junior high school and a middle school. And that's really important to me. This is a middle school. So when I saw a father walking down the hallway here and picked up one of the slips and said, "Dances," you know, that's fantastic, because I feel the same way. I really do. And that's why I offered a quick clarification to the father. In 7th and 8th grade, we offer dances, but they're very kid-friendly. I love that word, kid. And in 6th grade, we offer socials. So I quickly just clarified that to the father. We offer socials to our 6th graders, not dances. And there lies the difference between a junior high school and a middle school. Probably about 30 years ago, a lot of research went into the fact that this should not be just a holding cell for students, a prep program for high school. There's a lot of things that have trickled down from high school. A lot of the curriculum has trickled down. Certainly the standards have been raised instructionally. And a lot of the pressures put on a 12-year-old child are pressures that we never experienced in childhood. But I feel very strongly that in these 3 years that the students at the heart of middle school or in middle school, they are treated as children and given many opportunities for creative play and a chance to really explore. I want to just do a quick introduction because after I had the honor of sitting in the audience, like all of you, to one of Nancy Carlsson Paige's talks, I set out, in a different mindset, even as an educator. And I went to her talk probably about 8 months ago as an educator, but very quickly I became the parent that I am today as well. And that is really the role that I was in when I was a part of the audience about 8 months ago. And something interesting happened. The very next time that I wasn't thinking about her discussion, I turned on one of my favorite TV shows. You might notice, this might be very familiar to you. And something really struck me. They run reruns of Modern Family on just about many of the TV stations. So you have an opportunity, if you hit it at the right time, to view the episodes back to back to back. And this character, I think his name is Little Joe, there's a good season where almost every scene that he is in, he has an iPod or an iPhone in his hands. That is product placement. That is brainwashing all of us, the consumers, the ones that love and laugh at this show, to think that this is okay and this is a part of Americana. That all of our children, especially at this age, it's okay for them to have a device in their hands and it glowing in their face. So this is Little Joe at, I think about, my research said about 14 months or so. This is my daughter. So this to me is what childhood, the beginning of childhood, should be all about. And since being a part of the audience for Nancy Carlsson Paige, we have been very mindful, my wife and I as parents have been very mindful of really not introducing her to there are benefits to screens and devices and iPads and iPods. But what you will hear pretty much enmeshed in her entire talk this evening is this is part of our children and how their childhoods just really aren't there, or they're really not even close to the childhood that I experienced and hopefully that we've all experienced. So it is my absolute honor. I am absolutely thrilled to introduce to you Nancy Carlsson Paige, who comes to us with just a message that is also my message, and that is the 3 years that your fifth grader will be in this building, he or she will very much have a chance to be a child and enjoy their childhood, hopefully right up through high school. So I introduce you to Nancy Carlsson Paige.
Hi everyone. Very nice to be here. And I've never been here before, and that's kind of amazing because I live in Massachusetts. But wow, what a beautiful trip coming out here and we live in what looks like a gorgeous community. So this won't be a real long talk because I think we're timing it with the 5th grade tour or something. But I would like to talk to you about how childhood has changed so much in just a generation. And there are a lot of reasons why, but one of the biggest ones is really the influx of media and technology in children's lives. And given the time, I think that's a topic for us to focus on tonight. I think I'm going to ask you to start by thinking about your own childhood, the town you lived in, the home you lived in, and the school you went to. And when you came home from school, just kind of picture it. How did you spend your time when you weren't in school? Can a couple brave people raise your hand and just kind of call out what you did? Yeah, great. Outside.
Arguing with my sister.
Arguing with your sister. Very important. Playing in the woods, riding your bike, swinging on swings. Sports, reading a book. So, when we think about kids now and how they're spending their time, you don't need all the research studies to tell you. It's dramatically different, right? And a lot of it is hours that kids are spending on screens. And it's been very, very recent. It's happened really fast. Sometimes I feel quite overwhelmed by it because it's happened so fast that we don't really know what the effects are. All the devices have just cascaded into our lives really in the last 5 or 10 years. But we used to, television's been around for about 65 or 70 years, and for a long time we've been concerned about the amount of hours kids spend watching TV because the average preschooler spends more than 4 hours watching television. But then, very quickly, just in these recent years, it's not just TV, but it's apps on iPhones and tablets. 2/3 of preschoolers use tablets, and 1/3 of preschoolers in the U.S. own tablets. Computers. This is the latest thing I just found. So you can have a screen on your body. You don't even have to go looking for it. We definitely don't have enough research yet. This has all happened so fast. In the US, you can market stuff without finding out its effects. That's one of the things that's a little Neanderthal about the way things are approached in our country. Because ideally, you would actually see what the effects are: physiological effects, neurological, emotional, and social, before the kind of extreme marketing that we've seen. But that doesn't happen here. So, we know a few things from research. There's much more we need to know. But we know that kids who spend a lot of time on screens have sleep problems. They don't do as well in school. These are what research studies so far tell us. The screens are addictive. They actually can understand what's happening in the brain and why you keep kind of go at it and go at it. I've observed this. I have 7 grandkids. I cannot put my iPhone down because somebody's got it, and then I'll find like 4 games downloaded on it. So I have to hide it. I'm in the real world with you about technology. It's not like I'm in some ivory tower and I don't grapple with these things, because I definitely do. And they're very real issues for us. Just I read all the research, it's even more depressing. But it is, they are habituating, we know that too, like they just, you know, the more you do it, the more you want to do it. They create distractibility in children, but haven't you noticed even in yourself? If you do a lot of email or things like that, there's all these pop-ups and everything. It's hard to stay focused. So you wouldn't be surprised to know that research also shows with children that it works against deeper thinking using screens and also empathy. So we have a lot more research we need to do, but even what we know right now, just from child development, research and theory, and neuroscience, tells us a boatload. This is the Fisher-Price activity infancy. So the idea here is putting infants in this seat and getting them looking at screens from the first few months of life. So the influence obviously starts right at birth. A lot of the companies that market these things claim that they're educational, and there isn't any regulation of marketing to children. Corporations spend $17 billion marketing to kids in the U.S. every year at this point, and nobody's regulating them. The FTC, Federal Trade Commission, used to, but they no longer do. So if they make educational claims, nobody's there saying, well, show me the evidence, which is most unfortunate. But we know, just from child development research and theory, that children learn. They have to have direct experience. When you watch babies, and you've all watched babies, you see that they, first they're tracking things visually, then they start to be able to coordinate their hands, they pick up a rattle, they pick up another object, they bang them together, they drop things, they bang things, then they roll and they crawl, and they explore physical space using their body, using their senses. And this very experience that kids are doing in the first year or 2 of life is completely essential for brain development, because the brain is literally developing as the experience happens. So as a child moves in space, as a child picks up an object, the synapses are actually forming in the brain. And it's a very base level profound idea, but when kids are looking at a screen, this is the activity seat now that you can sit up, but when kids are looking at a screen, instead of interacting with the first-hand world, the direct experience of the real world, the neurons in the brain are not connecting as fully as if a child would actually be exploring the first-hand world. For example, an apple, let's say this kid's looking at a picture of an apple. You see a picture of an apple, and somebody could be really impressed because maybe they'll say, point to the apple, and the kid points to the apple, and the parent's like, oh, my kid's so smart. But if you hold an apple, you feel the weight of the apple. You move the apple in your hands. You roll the apple, you lick it, you bite it, you smell it. That's a level of experience that's far beyond what could happen on a screen, because on a screen it's just a symbolic representation of the apple. It's not the real apple. And so children, all through the early years, they learn optimally, they learn best when they have direct experience in the real world and not from a screen. And that's basic information, but it's hard to see that anywhere in the world around you because the marketing forces are so strong. Another important point is that from birth now, because children have so many tech toys, toys that have whistles and bells and lights and make music, and then screens in front of them, it starts getting kids accustomed from the time they're babies to being entertained by a screen that's out there. So in my work as an educator, I'm concerned about that because for me, children taking initiative in the world is one of the most important things. I want to see kids invent ideas, take initiative, solve problems, reach out and explore. So for me, putting kids in front of screens increases passivity and increases this idea of entertainment. Looking out there to be amused by the thing that's going to amuse you. My friend Joyce babysat for a 2.5-year-old grandchild, a friend of hers, Liam, and she brought a ball over there with her, and she told me she got, this is hard to believe, but this is true, because my friend Joyce doesn't lie. And she brought a ball, she gave the ball to Liam, 2.5, he rolled it around in his hands and looked at it and said, "How do you turn it on?" So that's the idea I'm trying to say about entertainment, that he's looking for the button that will make that toy amuse him, right? And it made me think about this other example with my grandson Jack, when he's the first of the 7 grandkids, when he was 2.5, because I was in his room with him and he had a ball. And he invented a game of throwing the ball into this upturned stool and trying to have it get caught in the upturned stool with the legs sticking up. And he did this for so long. He would throw it hard, he would throw it soft, he'd go close and drop it in. He'd walk away and throw it from a distance. He'd go to the corner of the room. Can I throw it from there? You know, all the time sort of hypothesizing in his mind, what will it be like to throw from this direction? Can I do it softly? And I'm thinking to myself, you know, while I'm watching it, this is how children build concepts in the early years. And it's very linked to success in school and being a thinking person and having a strong foundation of intelligence. Because he was learning about force and velocity and angles and distance with his body and with his senses. And this is what happens when children explore the first-hand world in the early years of life. They're laying the foundation for the concepts they're going to encounter in a more formal way or academic way as they get older. But it's a really essential foundation. And one of the things I worry about, as kids start to get older, you see a lot of these tech games that are, let's say, math games. This is something that was given to my granddaughter Isabella, and her mother tried to get it out of her sight so fast, but it wasn't easy because Bella saw it, and she's like, "Where's that Barbie computer?" And Lucy had put it up in the closet, but anyway, that was a different story. But I got to watch Isabella work with it, and basically it reinforces rote learning. It's got a bunch of math things, like how much is 4 plus 2? And you hit 6 and it either says good or try again if you're wrong, and over with these simple little math addition problems. And that, my concern about that is that when we think about how do children build math concepts, because mathematics is a field that's built on relationships, math concepts like number aren't actually in front of you. You understand them because you built some relationships in your mind. Like the number 4 is, you have to imagine 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 making 4. You have to build those relationships mentally or it wouldn't mean anything to you. So this little girl, if she's playing with those 4 little animals and she's playing with 4 small blocks and she plays with 4 large blocks, eventually she comes to understand, hey, wait a minute, these are all 4, but they don't look the same. You know, one of them takes up a whole bunch of space, some of them takes up a very little space, but they're all 4. For her to understand that, or any other number, she has to abstract the 4-ness or the 5-ness or the 6-ness of the things out of the objects and understand it as a concept. And that's why numbers aren't names. Like, you can teach my granddaughter Isabella 4 plus 2 is 6 because she can memorize it. That's rote learning. But it doesn't mean she understands the concept 4 or 2 or 6 or addition, because you can memorize these things when they're that simply laid out. And so what we want to do is try to provide experiences that are going to encourage children to build relationships with with objects and to start to understand math concepts in a very foundational and secure way that's going to support them as they encounter math, as they continue in school. And one of my concerns is so much of the technology games that we see kids playing, the fun little apps, they reinforce this kind of rote learning, but I think they're bypassing some of these really foundational experiences that kids need in order to have a solid foundation that's going to hold up all the way through trigonometry and advanced algebra and any other math and science they want to study as they get older. There's also the question of bypassing social and emotional growth with technology, because technology is very seductive to parents, grandparents, any of us adults who are dealing with kids who are sad, crying, yelling in a fight. It's really easy to hand an app and distract them from it, and our collective, we do it all the time, but it's worth thinking about, because what are we bypassing in terms of the social and emotional experiences they need when we do that? One of my grandkids, Jake, is Guatemalan and lives there, and every year we go there. We happen to go there in the winter, such as this winter, and have a wonderful visit. And we get very close. We see each other every day. And when we leave, it's always sad. And so when he was 4, and I told him it was time, Doug and I were going back to Boston, and he got very, very sad. I have a choice then, because Jake, like every kid, Jake actually called Doug in his office on Skype when he was 4, and we have no idea how he did it. So, he's tech savvy and was early on. This is one thing we all know. And I have a big family, so there are a lot of people influencing kids and giving them tablets and things. It's not the world according to Nancy in my family. But it makes me real, because I'm not in some other position than anybody else. But I had a choice right then, because he was really sad about our leaving. Should I could distract him. He loves those games on my phone. But I didn't do that. I actually got some popsicle sticks, and I made an airplane, and I put little Play-Doh people on it, and I said, Doug and I are going to fly to Boston. And he was 4, so understanding things in a concrete way is what works with 4-year-olds. And I brought the plane back, but we're going to come back and see you again. Well, he got into making planes. He made a lot of planes. He put everyone on them. His mom, his dad, himself, Doug, and me. He flew those planes to Boston, lots of times. He did it many times. And, finally, I reminded him, there would be a flight with just 2 of the little Play-Doh people on it. Then he made a house. He made a house. He told me this was a house, this green circle, and he put all of us in it. He put himself and Doug and me and his mom and his father Carlos in it. He wants everyone to be together. I can acknowledge to him how wonderful it is all to be together, and then again remind him it's time for us to go. And Ramona, my stepdaughter, Jake's mom, said the next morning when he got up, when we were catching our flight, he came down and said to her, Doug and Nancy aren't here, they're gone. But he was fine. So one of the things is just helping kids work through emotional and social issues like separation or many of the other issues they grapple with in ways that help them work through things. But also, in the case of technology, I'm saying there is a real temptation to not sort of go there and not put ourselves into those situations that take a lot of our energy, and they take creativity and wherewithal for us to deal with kids around real issues. And when we have a distraction that's so seductive, it's inviting to not have to spend the time. And we can't always. So I'm not saying we don't ever use the app. It's about when do we use it and using it consciously. But if we used it all the time, it means that kids don't get the opportunity to develop the coping skills and the inner life skills that they do develop when we deal with them in conflicts and we work with them with hard social and emotional situations. Because after that time of him knowing that he could handle that separation. That means he knows he can handle another separation. Because social and emotional things that we build inside, they're like math concepts and literacy concepts. We build them little by little by little in a cumulative way through our experience. And so we all of us adults, we have a role in that with kids. Are we going to help them get into that process, or make it easier on ourselves, really? Because it's a whole lot easier on ourselves to not do it, no doubt about that. Another big issue is that media is a teacher. In times past, children learned values and messages about the world and all about the world from their parents, their grandparents, their communities, their schools, maybe churches or synagogues or places families worship. But children, it was very close to the family's values, what children were learning. So if we think about it, media now that has come into children's lives from a world created by other people, programmers and people who are hip into media, and designers and producers with whole other agendas. They're having a big influence on the things children see and the values they develop, the sense of who am I? And when kids look at the screen, they're asking that question when they're little and through childhood and when they're teens. Who am I? What is a boy? What is a girl? How do humans treat each other? Those are the messages that are coming through. So we know that girls see an inordinate amount of images of very sexualized and thin women. It's a very kind of rigid stereotype, body type, and we know that the more they see these images, the more dissatisfied they are with their own body, and tendency to get depressed and even have eating disorders later on. These messages start really, really early. This is the Bratz doll. She's kind of the same version of that one, but it's for a little girl. Very sexualized, fashion-oriented. If you imagine, I hope some of you men played with dolls, but do you remember dolls you played with, you all? Well, what were the dolls like you played with? Probably, baby dolls. They look like babies, and they're generic babies. So these dolls are linked to media, and they come with their own identity and their own script, and they influence children's play, because children don't play as originally and imagine their own stories because they've seen these scripts and they tend to play out these scripts. So that's a big problem in terms of undermining the original imaginative play that we want to see children be developing. But also they carry these messages of what a girl is and what she should look like and what she should be like. And I don't know any woman who looks like this. It doesn't look healthy anyway to me. But I saw a study recently that 45% of girls in 1st to 3rd grade said that they were too fat. They needed to be thinner. So these messages get through. And the boys are getting, of course, a whole other set of messages. That's from X-Men. I think it's funny, huh? You hit a lever in the back of this thing and those blades come out. But they're getting messages that, the world is a violent place. You have to have weapons to get along. You solve your conflicts with violence. And maybe even a more subtle message, which is that violence is fun and exciting. I throw these in here to calm your eyes after those violent images. But those are important messages, and especially thinking about the world we live in. We live in a very violent society, and there's a real appetite for violence. And I do think it starts with our youngest kids. Those violent toys are marketed to 2-year-olds. So those messages are coming through. Star Wars violent toys marketed to 2-year-olds, many new lines of toys, Power Ranger. So kids are learning these messages really early. And violent video games are more of a problem because kids are actually committing the violence with the joystick and they get rewarded for it too. Now, we could talk a long time, if we had a long time, about violent video games. This and ones like it are rated mature. That's for age 17 and older. And I think there are adults who like to play violent video games, and that's really not my topic right now. My topic is there's no regulation of these whatsoever. Here, calm down. There's no regulation of them at all. So studies show that, you know, young kids can go in the store and come out with Call of Duty, no problem, because the store owner doesn't have any consequence to it and nobody's regulating it. So yes, the packages will say M or T for teen or whatever it is, general for younger kids, but there's no enforcement. So, you know, I think there should be. There should be a way to regulate it so that kids are protected. Studies show large numbers of third graders, fourth graders, fifth graders having played M-rated video games. And if you've never seen an M-rated video game, see if you can take a look, because it is brutal and it is quite shocking how violent and how brutal it really is. And that's why all the major medical organizations got together and read all the studies about this and made one statement, which is that viewing entertainment violence desensitizes children to violence. And that's really important for us as a society, because I don't think we want to be desensitizing our kids to violence. And I think when you play these when you're older, an adult, you're much more likely to be able to separate out yourself from the game. But it's a very different thing when kids are socialized into a violent culture with violent video games. They get an appetite for it, and it's also scary. So part of being desensitized is that you saw something so scary, you have to cut off from it. Let's talk about some things we can do, and then maybe we have time for a couple of questions or comments. One of them is, when we choose to use technology, is just to get a little more into the consciousness. Actually, it's what Justin was saying, just a little more into the consciousness instead of an automatic default reaction. Is it the best thing I can offer right now? Is there some way I could provide for my child that would be a better learning situation or a better way to cope in this situation than just using the device? Sometimes you're going to use it because you're going to be in a situation where you really feel like you have to. But there's more choice probably than a lot of us realize. Even like going to a restaurant and waiting for your dinner. I mean, I bring a little bag of Legos in my purse. I bring always paper and markers and just little Unifix cubes. And kids can be very occupied, but also they're learning. I mean, it's a more interesting activity because they invent what they're going to do instead of some programmer inventing it, right? And they make up their own games and they problem solve and they interact with you, and all of these things are healthier for their brain development and their social and emotional development than just playing a game on an app. We can avoid using technology as a reward or a punishment. That's also very tempting, because kids love the stuff so much, you can really get them to behave just the way you want by saying, taking minutes away from you, or this is a reward because you did your homework or cleaned the dishes. A mother I talked to had a little boy, 10 years old, named Dominic, and she said she tells him, if you're mean to your little brother, I'll take your PlayStation minutes away. Now, that approach works really well in the short term because you can really get what you want in the short term. But the problem is, in the long term, it's not really benefiting kids because they're not, as I was saying earlier, getting the opportunity to get any social and emotional experience or foundational skills that they carry with them into life. It's just they're learning actually that parents have power over them and they have nothing to say about it. I think to me it's a missed opportunity because in the first place, I would want to say to Dominic, if he were my child, I would want to help him understand what it feels like to his brother when he is mean to him. And I'd want to try to help his brother say to Dominic how it feels, the things that he's saying. or help his brother, depending on his age, draw a picture of what it feels like, and help Dominic listen to his brother respectfully about what he feels like when his brother treats him that way. Those are the kinds of relational building things I would want to see in a family. And so also when we, if we can actually use technology and media to talk with our kids about it, from the time they're really little, to talk with them about the media use, when they use it, what they see, it's a much greater help to them in a couple of ways. Number one, they start to self-regulate or reflect on their own use of technology, because in a really short time, they're going to be on social media and out of your view. And they're going to be doing whatever they do on it. And so helping them build self-regulation skills in relation to the media and technology from the time they're little is a huge help to them. And also, when you work with them like that, if you listen to what they want and you tell them what you want and you work some kind of plan out, which you have to keep working out, it's not a final thing ever, but it's an ongoing one. But if you're talking with them about the technology and letting them know how you feel and trying to work out some common shared agreement about how they use it and when they use it, they're also learning, alternatives to force and coercion and power over techniques from you as a parent. And that's pretty great, and that builds trust. Mom told me just a week ago or so that her 10-year-old boy saw a brutal sex scene on someone else's computer. That was really traumatizing for that little boy. And he came and told her that he had seen it. And we want that too. We want that door open so that kids trust us. They don't think we're going to punish them or take the iPhone away or the computer away or the tablet away if they saw something bad. So having some kind of trust and open dialogue about the technology is hugely helpful to them in several different ways. I mean, being that way with them in every way, where we try to share power and not use power over them, builds a lot of trust. Another thing we can do is encourage kids to get outside and play all the time. Now you live in such a beautiful place, I can see, hopefully they're playing outside, riding their bikes and doing things outside. But kids we know that play is diminishing in children's lives, and we know from research that creativity is declining in children. And we want to do whatever we can to foster play, creativity, interaction, joy. Downtime is a good thing, and in this fast-paced life, few people get it. And when they do play with materials, hopefully we give them materials that are open-ended, meaning paper, markers, Play-Doh, blocks, rocks, sticks, sand, water, any of the things that you can invent with and play in your own original ways with, that, and your imagination hasn't already been directed by some media that you've seen that instructs you with some script of what to reenact. So I think that's the time that we have, but do you have any comments or questions? Anybody? Oh! Anybody? Yeah, thanks.
I was thinking back to the example you gave of the apple in
Yeah.
terms of just how some of those connections aren't being formed at young ages.
Yes.
Are children able to build those connections as they get older, or is there like a window of developmental time where
Yeah.
those connections happen?
It's a really good question. The brain is wired for optimal first-hand experience in the real world in the first 5 or 6 years of life. It's wired for that. So it's kind of like language. Your brain is wired for language when you're around 2, 18 months to 3. And the brain is developing very, very rapidly in those early years. So to bypass that essential learning then would be problematic, because it would never be learned or understood in the same way. Could be understood, but maybe not as optimally and deeply. Anybody else? Yes.
Excuse me. One of the questions I have is, you hear about kids all the time, they learn from their parents, they learn from watching, and one of the things that we're always doing is doing this.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, is there any research that indicates one way or the other as to whether parents should consciously spend less time looking at their devices when they're around their children of any age?
Yeah, I really like that question. We don't have research yet on it, but can I tell you my opinion?
Sure.
Okay. Because you're right that children learn from us. When we sweep the kitchen floor, they want to sweep the kitchen floor. If we read books, they want to read books. And we can get as addicted to devices as they do. So it doesn't hurt us to put it away either, you know, and be present in the moment and fully experience a moment with them. And especially when we're with them, we want to really fully be there, listen to them, and experience ourselves as being fully present with them. And the technology always takes us away someplace else. I think it's better to put it away and have times when we do it. In my own family, no one uses devices when we're together. It's just something we're all in. It's not 100%, not every single person. My older son, his wife and kids, and my husband, no one pulls out a device when we're together. And I think that's good. I speak to pediatricians at Boston University every year, and they started, when devices came in, they always went to Children's Museum to observe parents, and when devices became so pervasive, they started expressing worry about what they were observing for the first time. Because they used to see parents interacting with their kids at the museum, climbing the rock wall, doing the bubbles, and all of a sudden they said, within a very short time, like a year or two, the parents were all on the sidelines on their device going, "Oh, good kid," and the kids were like, "Daddy, Daddy, look at me, oh, great." And they commented with alarm, really, that the parents weren't present, that they were distracted. And, you know, children need your full attention. So that's what I think. So I think we'll end, and thank you so much for listening.
I think my wife asked you to ask that question.
He's a plant.
I get that all the time. And actually, it's funny because this is the age. 5th grade parents often ask me, they ask our guidance staff, our school psychologists, I find no other grade that wrestles with when should my child get a cell phone. I really see that a lot in 5th grade. And there are safety reasons for a child being equipped with a cell phone. You being in direct line of communication with him or her, it does make some sense. I think what we're talking about is taking childhood back is, even if we do equip them with their cell phone, we very much have restrictions on that phone with them. One of the things that we advocate, and we've had the district attorney many times advocating, and that is when your son or daughter goes to bed, he or she should be turning in the cell phone. It should not go in the bedroom with your son or daughter at any age, up until late teens. And that's not us getting kind of a sense of what Nancy just spoke about and saying, device bad. There is a purpose for them. There is an instructional benefit to them. Their device is alive all in the school. But then there are challenges, and I'll give you 2 very concrete examples. It's with our 2 overnight experiences that we give 6th and 8th grade students. I'll share with you just a very quick story of this past 8th grade when we visited Washington, D.C. just about a month ago. First, we do allow all 8th graders to bring their cell phones. Again, I have to say, it is such a benefit to have a direct line of communication to them. I find it very difficult, and when I led the trip 15 years ago, I would share with them and have them restate to me a time where we're all meeting together kind of at a spot in a museum. And I have to be honest, when I transitioned probably about 4 or 5 years ago to texting all students, a reminder to where we were meeting, when we were meeting, the success rate of students getting there was increased, very much so. So there's a tremendous benefit for them having a device on their person throughout the trip. It's also a direct line of communication to their family. And I always joke during the family nights, that the way it usually goes is that your daughter texts you and shares that they're, not having a good time. You text me because I give a temporary cell phone. I look to the right, there's the daughter, she's laughing. I text the mother, everything's fine. And that's how we communicate. But I will say, when I walk up and down the buses, when we're on the road and touring DC just on the buses, it is sad because all of their heads are down and they're on their phones, and they're not experiencing what's happening around them. We had an opportunity to be present at, a couple of us, another teacher and 4 students, in fact, 2 National Junior Honor Society students, 2 student council students, had an opportunity to attend a speech by President Obama. This was just about a month ago. And we were cued, everyone in the East Wing was cued to when he was going to come up. It was a simple cue, some staff member was standing at the podium, and as soon as we were cued, everyone, including myself and the students and the teacher, all of our devices were on, and in front of us, they almost became our faces. And then there was just this long, almost pregnant pause that everybody was wondering, okay, where is he? And there was one person that was younger than the students who I took. It was a 2-year-old, and he was sitting right back at me. And he said in the cutest voice, he goes, "President." And we all kind of laughed, but we were all too busy having the phones right in front of us. And I just happened to look back, and President Obama was 2 feet away from us. And no one knew, because we all had our devices on, they were lit, and we weren't in the moment. We wanted to experience a moment later in time, which is why everybody had it set to video, but it was very powerful to me. Then very quickly, because it is a trip that I really want to start educating all of you on, or the 5th grade parents and guardians, the Nature's Classroom trip is a trip that I have a profound theory to. If a child, a 6th grade student, brings his or her cell phone, it's put away. I have, been in a very spirited conversation with some 6th grade parents about, the therapeutic, benefit of having music on, when, his or her son or daughter might be going to sleep. And I'm fundamentally opposed to that. The sounds of nature that surround these students is something they have to experience. What I say to the families is, I want your son or daughter to experience what the 12-year-old in 1982 experienced. And if that is, what the heck is that noise? It's an owl. It's okay. And that is powerful, and that's important, and that's lost if they're listening to music. So 6th grade, yes, they can bring their cell phones for a quick check-in, but it's powered on, a check-in to home, and then it's powered off. And the rest of the experience is, like it is in school, where their devices are away. I just want to share that we are making a donation to Nancy Carlsson. Paige is a senior advisor to Defending the Early Years. Defending the Early Years seeks to rally educators to take action on policies that affect the education of young children. The principal goals of the project are to mobilize the early childhood community to speak out against or argue with inappropriate standards, assessments, and classroom practices, to track the effects of new standards, especially those linked to the Common Core standards on early childhood education policy and practice. So not only does Nancy advocate for all of us as parents to do what we can to make sure that our children experience a childhood, but she does a lot of profound work with state education boards. She does a lot of supporting of teachers unions to really allow the autonomy of creative teachers to gain control, gain back autonomy and control of their curriculums, and instead of this big heavy government telling us what to teach and how to teach, and testing and testing and testing and testing our students over again. Nancy Carlsson Paige does a tremendous amount of work, has won a tremendous amount of awards. So again, I just want to thank her. We are making a donation as a community, as a learning community. My wife's corporation is also matching that community, so I do want to thank Ms. Carlsson Paige again.